Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Gillian Berry, and today we have a legend in the house. We have Loren Lockman all the way in Costa Rica. Many of you, I'm sure, know who he is. He is a water fasting expert and he runs Tanglewood in Costa Rica. And he has been vegan for 35 years and raw vegan, I believe, for 30 years. And you guys, my viewers, you have so many amazing questions for him, and so do I as well. So let's get right into it. Hey, Loren, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Gillian, so good to be here with you.
Yeah, great to have you on all the way in Costa Rica. Good vibes there. And I want to ask you, so first I would love to start out with what led you to veganism 35 years ago?
Right. Well, my story is actually a fairly common story. I think not the specific details, but the idea that, the basic premise. I got very sick. I got worse with 3 years of medical care. It finally occurred to me that medicine was only about suppressing symptoms. At the time, I had actually been studying nutrition since I was 15. But when I stepped back and took a look at it, I realized that I was doing everything conventional nutrition said I should do. And I was sicker than anyone I knew at my age, right? I was in my 20s. And so I thought, okay, there's a problem with conventional nutrition. And I started thinking about this and started thinking about the fact that every species had a natural diet. And I set out to determine what was natural for the human body. And a little bit of study made it clear that animals that eat animals have very different systems than humans do. And so I gave up all animal products. I also gave up all processed foods because it occurred to me that anything processed couldn't be natural, couldn't be part of our natural diet. It's a little bit embarrassing now to mention, to tell you this, but it took me several more years to realize that cooking food was also not natural. But that eventually occurred to me, and I gave up all cooked food. So for many years now, I haven't had a stove. We don't have a grill. There's no way to cook anything on site. And it's kind of cool here. As you know, I'm in Costa Rica. One of the reasons, someone asked me just yesterday, in summer actually, why do you live in Costa Rica? I was a guy I met from Northern California. I said, because I can. Like, why would I live anywhere else if I can live here? So I live on a fruit-based diet. In November, I'll celebrate 31 years. Here on site, we currently have more than 200 varieties of fruit growing. Right now, at this very moment, I have 4 people unloading a truck with 70 trees, 70 more fruit trees. We have about, I think, 8 or 10 varieties of durian, several of which we didn't have already, because we already have some here, and several other things we didn't have. And so we're constantly looking for new species. We can literally pick fruit every single day of the year. I almost never need shoes. I don't like shoes or long pants. I'm usually in shorts and flip-flops. Today, it's a little cool today. And so I've got on long sleeves and pants
Wow.
and flip-flops. But we're up in the mountains. You and I talked about the beaches here, which are beautiful. We're about 2,400 feet above sea level, maybe closer to 2,700 feet above sea level, which means it's 7 or 8 degrees Fahrenheit cooler here than it is at the beach.
Oh, wow.
And for me, it's beautiful. It's perfect.
Yeah. And do you
But
feel like you feel happier in the tropics? Are you glad you moved there?
absolutely. I wouldn't consider living anywhere else permanently.
Yeah. And I know when I lived there, I had a hard time getting my hands because I eat all raw. When I was there, I was all raw. I had a
Yeah.
hard time getting my hands on a lot of organic food. There was a great little local market, Samara Organics, and I was able to get some there. But I
Yeah.
did eat a lot of food that was conventional. And then I would have people come to me and say, like, oh, I worked on the banana farms here. Don't ever eat conventional. What are your thoughts on that? And I know it's sometimes hard to be all organic, right? What are your thoughts on that? And do you think the conventional foods can really affect us, especially as raw foodists, if we're eating a lot of them?
Well, there's no question that they can. Having said that, I mean, conventional foods are going to affect everyone, and they're going to affect us less than anyone else. I mean, this is surprising to most people. Most people don't understand the science here, but the average person gets their greatest pesticide exposure from eating animal products
Wow.
because because the animal feeds are also grown with these chemicals, and that those poisons are concentrated in the flesh and the milk and the eggs of conventional animal products. So if we're eating only the plants themselves, and I mean, one of the things that's true, I traveled quite a bit over the last 25 or 27 years to give lectures and seminars, less now than prior to a couple of years ago. Things shifted a little bit, but there are places in the world where it's very difficult to get organic stuff. If I'm in a place where I really can't find anything organic, I won't eat strawberries or apples or grapes. There's certain things, these are so heavily sprayed, you just don't eat, you just ignore them, you avoid them. There's certain things, you mentioned bananas, but bananas and avocados and pineapples and watermelons and papayas. Interestingly, these are like some of our staple foods. These are all foods that are relatively low spray foods anyway. Now, I mean, I want you to be clear. I don't ever recommend buying conventional produce if you can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
And a full 32 years ago, when I was still living outside of Washington, D.C., I committed to buying 100% organic produce. 3.5 years later, I opened Tanglewood. We're 26 and a half years old now.
Wow.
And when we were in the U.S., we served 100% organic produce to our clients. No exceptions. The only exception I made at all for the center was once a month we had a durian feast. And I've still never seen organic durian in the U.S. We were buying, durian from the Asian markets around the city, and it wasn't organic. I've never seen that. That would be once a month we would do that. When I got here, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to find much organic, and in fact, we used to buy from Samurai Organics. We tried for a while. The truth is, at the time, we weren't really very happy with the quality. We would have people that say, "Can we get the conventional? It tastes better." And things have shifted, fortunately. I've been in Central America now 17 years, 11 years here in Costa Rica, and we now have, we don't guarantee it's 100% organic. And the reason why is because we use several providers that are bringing things in from San Jose, which is 3.5 to 4 hours away. Mm-hmm. We get deliveries 3 or 4 times a week. But what happens is, like yesterday, I went to the farmer's market in Nicoya. You probably remember Nicoya.
Yep.
There's a farmer's market there every week. They set up on Thursday evening. It really is all day Friday. If I'm going to go, I try to go on Thursday before everyone shows up. And one of my team members said, "Hey, we're kind of low on these things. Can you get them?" So I know all the providers there. Some things we know are organic, and those are the things we typically buy. Other things, we're not always sure if they're really organic or not. So if we're in a situation where we've run out of papayas, normally we buy 100% certified organic papayas. But on a case like this, yesterday I came back with a dozen papayas. I can't really guarantee they're all organic. Mm-hmm. We just can't know that. Now, fortunately, papayas use very little spray anyway. You've got to keep one wasp off of them that lays its eggs on it. Other than that, there's really not too many pests that mess with it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we get into the water fasting stuff, I want to talk to you so much about Tanglewood and everything. I want to ask a little bit more about the raw foods diet you've done and vegan. Sure. So I believe you haven't supplemented for around 30 years. Am I right? No supplements?
Correct. You've done your homework.
I have. And I know you had your blood work done, I think about a year ago, and they said it was like as good as a 20 or 30-year-old.
Yeah, that's right. We refinanced. I bought a farm next door. We're currently on 35 acres. We actually have a contract to buy 25 more. But with COVID, et cetera, the funds are a little tighter than they used to be right now. We're still recovering from 6 months of closed borders. So that hasn't happened yet. But at the time to buy that farm, we refinanced the property here. And at the last minute, after 2 years of trying to get it's crazy how slow things can happen. I love it here, but
I know.
It's crazy. So, in the US, I would literally get a mortgage in a month. Right. It was 2.5 years to get this. And then we're not talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about like a $350,000 mortgage. And at the end, the bank says, "We realize that your business depends on you. If something happens to you, how are we going to get paid?"
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, crap. So I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll buy a life insurance policy on myself with you. If something happens, you're the beneficiary." And they said, "Okay, fine." So I had to go get full physicals. And I don't go to doctors at all with the exception of trauma. If I've cut an artery, which I've done on a couple of occasions, getting it sewn back together is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Right? Fasting's not the best way to deal with that.
Yeah.
But there's very few other things that I'm going to go see a doctor for. So I hadn't done any of these things, but they wanted a full workup on everything. And there were, I think, 3 different doctors that were involved testing different things. They all said to me at some point, "You're how old?"
Wow.
They just couldn't believe what they were seeing.
So everything was like the B12, like everything was fine. They checked all that too.
Everything was fine.
So why do you think with some people, like they don't supplement for a while, they check their blood work, they're deteriorating, the blood levels are
Yeah.
all off? Like, how do you think you're getting it through the foods and everything? Or maybe it's the fasting that helped with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I can tell you exactly what's going on. First of all, the gut biome, which is 10 trillion bacteria that live in the intestine, the large intestine. It's called the second brain. It weighs as 3 pounds, just as much as the average brain weighs. The gut biome produces all the B vitamins every day, all of them, including
Wow.
B12. Yeah, the problem is that B12 is always bound to proteins, and the average person is severely dehydrated. And I say that because over the last 16 plus years now, we've measured more than 6,000 clients' hydration levels. Everyone comes in here dehydrated. Okay.
Wow.
Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. And it's actually, it might surprise you to know, the levels of hydration relative in one group to the other. But most people are quite dehydrated. I'm just trying to think how best to present this simply. Hydrochloric acid. We secrete hydrochloric acid into the stomach in order to digest protein. It's only for protein. Now, everything we eat contains some protein because protein's the cell structure of every living cell. So I get almost all of my protein from eating watermelons and papayas and mangoes and pineapples. I don't eat concentrated protein the vast majority of the time, and I do perfectly fine. But the point is that we secrete a protein digesting acid into a bag made of protein. How do we not digest our own stomachs?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the stomach is protected in a healthy body by a mucous membrane, a layer of mucus, right? Mucus is 97, I think, or 98% water. So the average person is dehydrated enough that every single day of their life, the body is saying, where am I going to get enough? There isn't enough water to do everything. What are we going to do to make sure that the heart, lungs, liver, kidney, brain, pancreas, thyroid, and bloodstream have what they need? These vital systems and organs have what they need. Well, I think the answer is that our virtually infinitely intelligent bodies are going to take water from things that are not critical to your survival.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you seen Stevie Wonder's new piano?
No.
Neither has he. Okay. You don't have to see to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's been blind for a long time. It's really useful to be able to see, but it's not necessary for survival. Okay. Skin. It's great to have skin with a high degree of elasticity, which depends on being hydrated, but it's not critical to your survival. If you have joint pain, you can still survive. Okay. So what the body's doing is taking water away from the eyes, the skin, the joints, the discs. These are all things that are non-critical to survival. And most of them, by the way, are directly related to what we normally think of as aging, or what we think of as normal aging, right? When we get wrinkled as we get older, we shrink as we get older. Our vision declines as we get older. None of those things needs to happen. And by the way, virtually all those things can be recovered. We can recover almost all of it. We can heal almost all that stuff. But coming back to the B12 question, if the average person is walking around, let's say 20% dehydrated or so, what's going to happen is the body is not going to make the mucous membrane in the stomach, the protective barrier in the stomach may not be fully intact. Mm-hmm. So what would the body do? What would a virtually infinitely intelligent body do if we need tiny amounts of protein anyway, and we're not capable of fully protecting the stomach? What I think what the body would do is it would turn down the concentration of hydrochloric acid. Mm-hmm. And here's a crazy thing. It's a well-known fact for decades that the average person is walking around hypochlorhydric, which means low stomach acid.
Wow.
I believe this is why. I think it's because our virtually infinitely intelligent body is saying, we have to turn down the acid. The stomach's not protected. This is what we have to do. But because B12 is bound to a protein, if our stomach acid is low, we're not going to be able to cleave the B12 from the protein so that we can use it. Mm-hmm. This, I think, is what's happening. Wow. So in a well-hydrated body, there's no issue with hydrochloric acid. We have no problem. Okay. Wow. So people say to me all the time, well, isn't that hard to digest, whatever that might be? I'm not even sure what. I'm trying to think of something. I'll say, no, I have no trouble with that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that's because my body is well hydrated. It's the best hydrated body we've ever measured here in the 16 years we've been measuring.
Wow.
Well, that's because I've fasted a lot, dozens of times, and with some poor choices every once in a while. I mean, I've made poor choices every now and again. Aside from those, I've been 100% raw now for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And I focus on a high water content diet. I'm completely clear. For me, it's not a raw versus cooked debate. The question is, what actually belongs in the human body? I started my journey asking what's natural for the human body. Mm-hmm. So, and it's interesting because I've been teaching the same things now for 30 plus years, including that broccoli and the other cruciferous vegetables are not part of our natural diet. They're not optimal for us. Now, a lot of people want to argue with that because these are superfoods loaded with nutrients. Well, there's now various different studies that all demonstrate the same thing. And I'll just give you a quick summary of what they demonstrate. You're probably aware that we need vitamin A and that there's no vitamin A in plant foods. So what the human body does is it converts carotenes. We get vitamin A only from animals because animals eat carotenes and they make vitamin A. Well, our bodies are meant to do exactly the same thing. There are people out there, the people that are pushing or promoting the carnivore diet or the ketogenic diet, the Paleolithic diet. They say, well, you have to eat vitamin A. No, you don't. All the vegetarian animals don't do it. We don't need to do it either. What we're supposed to do is eat carotenes. But they've actually tested groups of humans, and they'll give them a serving of broccoli or kale, and then they'll give the same people at a different time a serving of a mango or papaya. They've pre-measured the portions, and what happens is the green cruciferous vegetables on average will have twice as many what they call vitamin A equivalency units. It's the ability for the body. It's how much carotenes, basically. Mm-hmm. The body, how much vitamin A could be produced with that quantity of carotenes coming in. So on average, the serving of the portion of greens will have twice the vitamin A equivalency units as the fruit that they're testing.
Wow.
But on average, the average person will get twice as much vitamin A from eating the fruit than they do the leafy greens. What that means is it's 4 times easier for us to get the vitamin A, to create vitamin A, get the carotenes from the fruit than from the leafy greens, 4 times easier. Wow. And what I've always taught is we should focus not on what contains the most nutrients, but on what our bodies can easily digest. Mm-hmm. Because that's the key. It's not, if we're eating things we're not digesting, we're not getting any benefit from them, no matter how much they might be loaded with nutrients. It's not helping us if we're not digesting it very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering, so much, what have been maybe some of the most valuable books that you've read along the way, or like things that have just been the most inspiring pieces of knowledge over the years?
Okay, well, that's a tough one because I've been doing this now so long. As I said, I started studying nutrition at 15, and you might be aware I'm already 17.
Yeah.
No, I turned 61 a few months ago. So yeah. I've been at this for 46 years. And it's hard for me sometimes to remember where something came from. It's challenging. I'm writing a book now, and I need someone to go back in and find all the studies I'm quoting, because I remember the information, but where it came from, I don't know. I have to go find it again. Herbert Shelton, one of the hygienic authors, he's probably my primary dead mentor. He's, I never met him. He was dead before I was aware of this stuff. He died in 1985. But he wrote encyclopedic books like The Science and Fine Art of Fasting, The Science and Fine Art of Nutrition. And he wasn't right about everything, but he was right about quite a bit. And there have been a lot of others. And I've had living mentors as well. Alec Burton from Sydney, Australia was a friend and a mentor. There have been several. Unfortunately, most of those guys are gone. The older guys, they would all be in their 80s, 90s, or 100s by now, and most of them are no longer around. But I also read as many studies as I can every year. And so I'm picking up information from literally all over the place all the time. I wish I could tell you more, but yeah.
And have you ever over the years considered going back to animal products, or had any health problems and been like, maybe I'll go back or change course?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I would absolutely never eat flesh of any kind once again. Not a chance. I mean, honestly, within 10 minutes of realizing, okay, that might be a slight exaggeration, but As soon as I realized many, many years ago, decades ago, that not only did I not need to eat meat to be healthy, but that eating it was almost certain to ruin my health. As soon as I realized that, I thought to myself, well, hang on, if I don't need to eat meat to be healthy, what gives me the right to take another species' life?
That's
I mean, it'd be one thing, cats are obligate carnivores, right? That's the way their bodies are set up. They're natural hunters. There's no morals involved when a cat kills a mouse. It's what their body instinctively, what their body's going to do. You and I see a little critter and we go, isn't that cute? We have no desire to pounce on it and dig our teeth into their jugular vein. But that's exactly what cats have. So, if we needed animal products to be healthy, it would be a different story. But because we don't, and I don't see any way to justify it, I would never, ever eat flesh again. Now, to be honest, I could see, I think, although there's also a lot of suffering involved in other animal product industries, including honey. I've eaten honey on a couple of occasions. We don't stock it. We don't use it here. I'd rather leave all animal products alone. There were a couple times in my past where I tried ice cream or cheese. My body always says, "Hey, you're an idiot. You shouldn't eat that. It's a bad idea." But for me, it's not the same as eating flesh.
Yeah.
But no, have I ever desired these things? Going back to them, not a chance in the world.
Yeah.
Never.
And what do you think about these extreme diets? Well, I can tell. I know you're not a fan of the carnivore diet, obviously. Me neither. But these extremes like the carnivore or even like fruitarian. Do you think people can thrive long term? Like as long term as you've done on 100% fruitarian, like mostly only fruit?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I know of a few people who are doing that. Who have been eating only fruit, or they claim only fruit for decades. Honestly, I think most of them probably would be healthier adding leafy greens into the mix. I know, listening to my own body and working with many, many clients. I've worked with more than 15,000 clients personally over these years. I've been a health coach now for more than 30 years. I know that with any of us, after enough time, I've gone as long as maybe 2 or 3 weeks eating only fruit. And one time I was camping for a while and there was no way to keep leafy greens. They don't do very well if they're not refrigerated, especially in a hot summer. I was living on fruit because that's what there was. But it was interesting because at the time I was with a woman I was living with. And as we left our campsite, to head home, we had a long drive. We both thought, let's go find a place to get a salad. We both we're craving a salad because it had been a couple of weeks. That's what happens for me. If I normally will eat greens, let's say an average of a couple times a week. Usually after 3 or 4 days, my body wants greens. Okay. And what I find is with my fasting clients, and this is different because we're taking people, many people today think of fasting as 16 hours without food. I call that normal life, except eating more than one should.
Right?
I think over most of human history, most people couldn't afford to eat 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah, true.
Right. So people were eating 1 or 2 times a day, probably within a smaller window than a 16/8 intermittent fast.
I guess I'm not intermittent fasting when I stop eating at 3. Yeah.
Well, no. You call it what you like. To me, the using the word fasting in that context seems a little silly because, here when we talk about fasting, our average client fast is 26 days.
Wow.
I've taken somewhere between 700 and 800 people on fasts of 6 weeks or longer. With my longest client fast, 4.5 months on only water.
Wow.
This was a guy who had stage 4 testicular cancer. And when he was finished, they couldn't find a trace of cancer.
Unreal.
Okay. Now, obviously, neither you nor I would do particularly well if we went 4.5 months without food. I can see you from the waist up. You're relatively lean, as am I. We're not going to survive 4 months without eating. But people who are obese or morbidly obese often can go much longer. The longest fast in history was 382 days.
Wow.
Almost a year and a month. Yeah, a year and 17 days. So, it's possible for someone who has enough reserves to go a very long time. And the reason it's possible is because our physiological state actually changes. Okay, we go from what I call normal feeding physiology to fasting physiology. And it's so important to understand this. Right now, this moment, I'm fasting 3 MDs. They're not together. It's just a coincidence.
Wow.
2 of them are here, and one of them is working with me. I work with people remotely for the last 13 years.
Yeah, someone commented that on my channel. Ramen, I think. Raymond. I just completed a 21-day water fast with you, they said. And he said he worked with you remotely and it was a great experience.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate your comments. I've been doing this now 13 years. I don't think I've missed a day in 13 years. I've always had at least one client. Now, back then when I started out, I would do 1 or 2 clients at a time. I would do individual calls with each one. Now I do group calls, up to 4 calls per day, depending on how many people I have, up to 6 people on a call. So I'm working with as many as 20 or 24 remote clients, as well as many as 30 plus people here at the center. And, because I have a lot of experience with this now, it's usually pretty clear what's okay and what's not okay. But anyway, we were talking about something entirely different. And it's crazy when we see these people over and over again, the same things happen. We get the body clean enough and it responds very differently than most people think is okay, to this or that. Right. So
Wow.
it really it's allowed me to shift and sort of see things from a very different perspective. Right. We have sort of a laboratory source, because what happens in the average body, I mean, you take the average person, right, who in North America, the latest research says the average person gets more than 61% of their calories now from ultra processed foods.
Wow.
Which is insane.
It's insane.
I mean, because ultra processed foods aren't actually foods at all.
I think it's crazier now than ever. Even when I grew up, like I was born in 1982, even the 80s, 90s, it was got pretty bad, but I think it's even worse now. I see at my daughter's school, like the way the kids eat, and I'm just like, this is crazy.
It is absolutely insane. I mean, these people unfortunately are in for a rude awakening. But someone who's living on that kind of crap can eat it and still feel normal. They feel okay. It's relative to how they normally feel. They're going to feel perfectly fine. When we get someone's body clean enough and we put them onto a different diet, then we can really see how they're being affected.
Yeah.
But I started to say, I'm fasting 3 doctors right now, 1 remotely, 2 of them are here. I think this is now 6 or 7 over the last 12 months. And, the good news is it's increasing. 20 years ago, I had fasted 2 doctors, right? In the first 6 years or 6.5 years.
Wow.
Now I'm fasting multiple every year. And there's more and more people. In fact, the good news. But what I started to say was, a lot of the concepts we're talking about, doctors aren't aware of this. They're not learning this stuff in medical school.
No.
They don't understand any of this. I mean, of course, nutrition, I'm sure you're already aware of this, but the doctors graduating from the best schools today are still having an average of 1 3-hour lecture on nutrition.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
That's it. Well,
it's crazy.
I don't know how much of the history you know or how much of it you want to get into, but things shifted significantly about 95 years ago. Mm-hmm. And what happened was John D. Rockefeller, the world's first billionaire, began investing in what back then was little tiny pharma, not big pharma. It was just a little tiny, new industry. But he didn't become a billionaire by accident. He was a pretty smart guy. And so he wanted to hedge his bets. He wanted to make sure that he was going to win and win big. So he took over control of the American Medical Association, and they changed the rules that said what medical schools were allowed to teach. And they forced the closure of more than 70% of the operating medical schools at the time. Anyone who wasn't willing to follow along behind them and do whatever they said, they were gone. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting because about a year ago, I was giving a lecture here and I talked about the fact that they used to teach fasting in medical schools. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there was 2 doctors fasting with me at the time. One of them approached me afterwards and said, I didn't want to speak up during your lecture, but I want to tell you, I have a book at home, which is about the history of medicine. And it says in this book, written like 60 or 70 years ago, that they taught doctors how to supervise fasts.
Wow. Yeah. You see a lot of damaged people come in, and you see a lot of people with all kinds of different lifestyles. I'm sure you maybe even see some super clean people coming in, different lifestyles, right? Raw vegan, carnivore, maybe standard American diet, all different levels of health. And do you notice, like, depending on their lifestyle, do they have drastically different experiences and results water fasting?
They do. Yeah. It's a very interesting question. The people who have the easiest time, well, the people who have the easiest time typically are people who've already fasted with me and are coming back for round 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 13, I think is the record so far.
Wow, people do that many. Wow.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, no one probably would need to do that if they consistently made excellent choices between fasts. But we have people. I have a guy who was just here, I think, for his 7th fast last session. He's a great guy. I have a woman who's here now. I think it's her 5th time here. Another one's here for the 3rd time. A lot of these people, they leave us and they wind up going back and making some compromise choices. And then, so they're not really always advancing. They're advancing and then losing some ground and going forward again and then losing some ground. I believe that most people probably need to fast. If you've been 20, 30, 40 years or more on the planet making conventional choices, most people probably need 3 or 4 fasts of 21 to 30 days to really clean out most of the garbage and take their health to an amazing new level. And I'm willing to put in writing to anyone, if you follow my coaching, you will take your health to a level that's higher than it's been for decades. For some people, it'll be ever. It'll be amazing. It's amazing to most people, how well they can feel and function after fasting. But coming back to your question, aside from those people who've already done it, people who are eating a very clean diet, a high water content diet, fruit-based diet, fruits and leafy greens, pretty much only, not a lot of dehydrated foods, if any, and they're drinking enough water, and they've been doing this for a while, they're usually much better hydrated than most people. They don't have as much of the nasty stuff stuck in their system because they've been able to eliminate some of that already. They're usually going to have an easier time than others. What's really interesting is people who are, first of all, there's a couple of things that might be surprising to people. People eating a fruit-based diet, a big trend these days is people eating a fruit-based diet who don't drink any water because they think they're getting all they need from their meals. And, theoretically, you should be able to get most of the water you need from your food if you're eating 100% optimal, okay? But there's a problem. If you haven't already cleaned out all the old garbage, okay, you've heard of mucoid plaque. People wonder whether it exists or not. For anyone who's watching this who's not sure, on my YouTube channel, we have about 1,000 videos, including over 100 with clients talking about their process. And lately, especially over the last couple of years, because I've gotten so much from people going, I don't even believe in that. I ask you, how about that? And they're like, oh yeah. We had a guy, we ended a session 3 weeks ago and we had a 2-week break. We opened again on Saturday for a short session. But 3 weeks ago, on Saturday, I had a guy leave here 3 weeks from tomorrow who was 47 years old. He fasted for 35 days. He, for the last 12 days of his 14-day refeeding period, or 11, he eliminated 11 to 16 times every day.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a guy, 73-year-old, who fasted for 42 days. And that's a 21-day refeeding period. The last 8 days of his refeeding period, he eliminated more than 11 times per day. And the last day, he actually had a flight. He and his wife was here with him. They had a 3 a.m. flight from San Jose, Costa Rica, back to the U.S. On Saturday morning. So we had a taxi come pick them up at 5 p.m. on Friday to take them towards the airport. When he left us at that point, he'd already had 20 bowel movements that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Eating 4 times a day, eating free, watermelons, papayas, coconut water, green salads. These people, I had a guy 4.5 months eliminate between 7 and 16 times every day. Okay, it's crazy what happens. But most people are building up this reservoir of old hard stuff. So I call it the giant sponge of old material. Okay, It's living inside the small intestine for the most part, which means enemas and colonics aren't going to touch it. Okay, you can do herbal cleanses and all the saltwater flushes you want. This stuff is hard and dry and it's not going anywhere until you give your body time to break it down and hydrate it, fasting 21 days or more. So we see this over and over again. And when people, if they're eating optimally for 20 years, living on a fruit-based diet, but they haven't got this giant sponge out, every time they eat or drink, that old hard stuff is absorbing some water. When they go to bed at night and they don't eat or drink for 8, 10, 12 hours, it dries out again. Every day it's absorbing water. It never goes anywhere. but it prevents them from ever getting close to hydrated. And when we get that stuff out, it changes everything.
Changes
Literally
lives. People say they just feel so euphoric, like a different person.
Exactly. It's amazing what happens. And it's shocking how many conditions seem to be directly correlated to the presence of that material in the system. And I'll give you just one example. We had a guy about 2 years ago. I think he was in his late 40s, if I remember correctly, maybe early 50s. He was fasting because he had these occasional migraines, and they would be so bad, he would lock himself in a dark room for 2 or 3 days. Couldn't do anything. Worked for himself, fortunately.
Wow.
But couldn't function. So he completed a 30-day fast with me. It was, I think, the 5th day of refeeding out of 12, when he said to me, last night, I had the worst migraine I've ever had in my life. And then I had a bowel movement and it immediately disappeared.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that, like, I've heard before you release mucoid plaque, like you could have you feel terrible before. A lot of people say that, and then they release it, they feel so much better.
Sometimes it's crazy, but you're absolutely right. And that's normal. Sometimes people feel worse after having a bowel movement while they're in this process, because the next batch is even worse. So we have a client here. Yesterday was day 6. She'd been doing fine. Yesterday morning, I all morning from 5 a.m. till 11 o'clock lecture, I've got calls with clients, with group calls with people fasting, one-on-one consultation calls. And someone brings me a note that says, this client is in the bathroom with our nurse. She's really feeling poorly. Can you go see her as soon as possible? So when I got off that call, I went to the bathroom where she was, and I said, "You okay?" And she tells me what happened. She felt fine. Then she had the urge to have a bowel movement on day 6 of her fast. She went to the toilet and she eliminated quite a bit. And as soon as she was done, she started to feel much worse, much worse. Serious pain in the belly, cold sweat. I mean, she was drenched. The floor was drenched with her sweat. She's like, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, what happens sometimes is the next batch is so toxic that you start to feel even worse." And that's what happened. And fortunately, with several hours later, she was feeling much better already. But there's this short-term effect that happens, maybe from what you just eliminated, maybe from what's coming. As we're moving this stuff through, we're reabsorbing toxins in the bloodstream. So.
And do you believe in people doing enemas or colonics on a water fast, or no?
Honestly, I don't believe we should ever do enemas or colonics if we can avoid them. We certainly don't. We don't have colonics here. We don't recommend using enemas here. The reason why is fairly simple. In fact, to back up a little bit, I'll say that my overall philosophy is that healing is a biological process. Cleansing is a biological process. So only the body, the organism, can cleanse or heal the organism. So what we want to do is we want to get out of the body's way so that it can cleanse and heal, rather than manipulating it in any way. We want to get out of the way. So enemas and colonics are manipulating the body, trying to create a specific outcome. When we do use them, we're flushing out beneficial bacteria. Okay, the gut biome, the second brain, lives in the large intestine. We don't want to flush this out. Okay, but that's what happens. We alter the pH of the colon. We weaken the muscle, and the more we do, the more we weaken the bowel muscle. And so science is clear now. There are studies that show that enemas and colonics produce poorer bowel function after the fast, poorer than before. Here,
wow,
my clients virtually never use them. Every once in a while, maybe a few times a year, someone will have a mass that they just feel like they can't move it. They're in a lot of pain. They've got something hard and dry. They can't move on their own. We'll offer them an enema. They'll usually be able to move that stuff. And then that's it. They don't need to do anymore. But I would say they're to be avoided whenever possible because of the negative ramifications of using them. We just don't need to do this. Okay, we have amazing results without them virtually every time. And it occurred to me that we never, again, we're seeing people eliminating, dozens and dozens of times after their fast. But I don't think we ever completed the part about how people are affected. So that the raw vegans who come in not having eliminated, they're usually, and not drinking water, are usually very dehydrated.
Wow.
Even though they're eating a perfect diet. And the only people more dehydrated are the people who have been dry fasting from time to time.
Wow.
These people tend to be seriously dehydrated. I have a young guy now. He's quite an expert on fasting. He's produced a documentary on fasting. He's fasted many times. He'd been dry fasting quite a bit. And so his hydration level is one of the worst. The only people worse than his are the people who are in their 60s and 70s. Most people are becoming more chronically dehydrated the longer they live, right? Every
Wow.
day, a little bit more.
And I
This guy
think being
started,
dehydrated, it can affect you in many ways. Like I heard
oh,
it's common to feel anxiety, depression, all kinds of different things.
absolutely. It's funny. In my live broadcast, every Friday, I've been doing a live broadcast for the last 6, 7 years. I talked about that today. I was
Wow.
talking about creating a high level of emotional balance and how being dehydrated is a huge negative factor. If you want to feel well emotionally, you've got to be hydrated. But yeah, it's crazy how dehydrated these people can get. And not just their body, but the old hard material in their bodies is more hard and dry than ever. So it can take much longer, can be much harder to move that stuff out. And until we get it out, we're just not coming close to maximizing our potential.
And do you think coconut water can hydrate us as much as water? And what do you think about coconut water fast? I did one in Costa Rica when I lived there. I did 14 days only coconut water. Do you think that's crazy, or do you think that only water is more beneficial?
Well, so there's no question that only water is a lot more beneficial. No doubt about it. And I'd invite you to come fast with me at some point, or do it at home if because you have kids. I can guide you remotely. I guarantee you'll tell me at the end way more powerful than anything you've ever done. I promise you, that's what happens. Coconut water can be very hydrating for sure, and it contains electrolytes. It contains calories and nutrients and all the macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. You could live on coconut water theoretically forever. Okay, it's not technically fasting at all, because fasting technically means the absence from all nutriment, calories, and nutrients. So it's a lot easier because you can live your normal life. I mean, I once did 4 months on juices. Okay, you could go forever on juices if you drink enough of them.
So that's a cleanse then, right? Not a fast when you do.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's technically it's not really fasting, and that's the thing, because there are calories or nutrients present, either one. You're still in normal feeding physiology. Now, the less energy you put into processing your food, the more energy your body has to cleanse and heal, right? No question about it. But to suggest that you're going to get as much benefit, there's no chance of that. As long as your body has to do the work of processing any calories or nutrients, it's taking energy away from the process of cleansing and healing. And again, I think I have a little bit of authority here, because after all these years, we literally see people who've tried everything. They've done coconut water fast. They've done lots of juice fast. In fact, it just occurred to me, some of the people who are following you may know a guy named Jeff Juices.
Yep,
on
they
Instagram.
do. A lot of them. Yeah.
So you may be aware, but Jeff is an amazing photographer. And for years, he claims he grew up eating only junk food. There was no produce in his house, no fruits, no vegetables. And by the time he was in his 20s, he felt pretty ill. And he eventually turned to juicing. And, he's now an expert in juicing and guides people through the juice fasting process or juice feasting process, and sells juicers. And, that's how he makes his living. Mm-hmm. He told me he came to fast with me last year. And by the end of his fast, it was going to be 21 days. He went up doing 19. He was saying publicly, on his Instagram channel, telling people, don't juice fast, go to Tanglewood instead. It's way more powerful. He's saying this was the most life-changing thing I've ever done. And then he came back and did it again just a couple months ago, and he said, I can't believe I feel even more vibrant and energetic than I did before. Now, this is a guy who's done many, many juice fasts prior to coming here. There's no comparison really, because it's only when we're resting the body as completely as possible, which means no calories and no nutrients, that we can go as deep as possible.
That's because the body doesn't have to work to digest that, right? So to digest anything, so it can just focus on healing. Is that why?
Well, it's not. You're right, but it's not just digestion, because some people say, yeah, but it doesn't take much to digest this. Okay, maybe that's true, but it's not just about digestion. It's about digestion. It's about absorption. It's about assimilation. It's about marshaling the nutrients. We have to do something with everything that comes in. We're using energy to move the stuff around, right? Mm-hmm. So the best thing we can do is to get out of the body's way, rest as completely as possible. And again, I get that to the average person, this sounds really radical. It's hard for most people to imagine this could actually be okay. Most people think this is basically starving yourself.
But at the end of the day, it's very, very old school knowledge, I feel like, too, you know?
Well, absolutely. In fact, I mean, first of all, it's estimated there's approximately 25 million animal species on the planet. Most of them are insects. Virtually every species, when sick enough or badly enough injured, will lay down and stop eating. This is what animals do because, again, the organism heals the organism. They're just trying to get out of the organism's way by resting as completely as possible. And it's not just that it happens in nature. Of course, you know, Hippocrates and his probably most famous quote, the one that's used by every alternative practitioner, let your food be your medicine your food. But I'll bet you don't know what his very next words were. What he said was, the entire quote was, let your food be your medicine and your food. But to feed yourself when you're already sick is to feed your sickness.
Wow, yeah.
He fasted his patients. Okay, that's what he wasn't saying you should eat medicinal foods like herbs. He was saying, don't eat at all. What he was saying was, you take care of yourself by eating properly. That's what when he said, let your food be your medicine. He doesn't mean eat things that have a medicinal effect. He meant eat in such a way you don't get sick. If you get sick, stop eating because so the body can heal itself. And it wasn't just Hippocrates. I mean, this was a common thing. If you wanted to study with Pythagoras, you know, the famous mathematician, you had to fast for 40 days first, right? He didn't like fat students. No, it's not about that. He didn't want to spend his time tutoring people that weren't thinking as clearly as possible.
Yeah.
When we get the garbage out, you asked before, or you made a statement, I think, dehydration has a huge impact on how the body functions. You're absolutely right. Consider that science tells us that if your brain is 2% dehydrated, you lose 20% cognitive function.
Wow.
Most people are walking around way more dehydrated than that, which means most people could be a lot smarter than they currently are just by getting themselves fully hydrated. It literally changes everything. Think about injuring yourself. Were you ever athletic, Gillian?
Yeah. Not like a professional or anything, but when I was young, I played rep baseball and I've always been a runner, stuff like that.
Okay. So I played baseball too, as well as soccer, and swam competitively. You're much more likely to injure yourself, injure a muscle, pull a muscle when your muscles are tight than when they're flexible. Okay. Think about, you have how many children?
2.
Okay. Natural birth, hospital birth.
The first one was a hospital birth and I didn't like the experience at all. So the second one was completely natural at home.
Beautiful. Water birth?
No, I tried in the water. It just wasn't happening. So it was like a squatting birth. Yeah.
Okay. Well, of course, squatting is the position.
That's the natural position, not the legs up in the hospital. So
no, legs up in stirrups is for the male doctors. I mean, now there's females too, but originally this was male doctors. It was for their benefit. Makes it easy for them.
Yeah.
Well, a lot harder to push a large object through a small opening if you're lying on your back instead of letting gravity assist you, right?
Exactly.
But now, even with gravity assisting you, if you weren't fully hydrated, and you probably weren't fully hydrated, right? Chances are good. I mean, most women, let me say it this way, most women, one of two things happens. And a lot of people, especially the male listeners, probably don't know this. Most women either have what's called an episiotomy, which is where they are opened up from the vagina almost to the anus to create a larger opening, or they naturally try to get this baby out. And that actually heals more easily, but it's still very painful, as you can imagine, okay? I have had dozens of young female clients fast with me, go on and eat optimally, get pregnant, and deliver babies that are with absolutely pain-free births.
Wow.
Because
I always saw those pain-free births and I dreamt of that, but mine was so painful. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, again, until you clean out your body completely, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to ever get hydrated. But once you do, everything changes. Everything changes. It's crazy how it shifts things.
Well, I do plan on coming there one day. When my kids are a little bit older, I want to come there for sure. And I'm wondering, like, if somebody has health problems, but they're very addicted to some stuff, say they drink or they smoke or they drink a lot of coffee, is it too extreme to come there and just go off everything the very next day they get there?
Well, I mean, to answer that question in a way that doesn't put people in danger, it's important to understand for anyone using medications, with some medications, you must wean off of them. You can't simply go cold turkey. Now, coffee, you can go cold turkey. Cheese and bread, you can go cold turkey. But if someone's using, for instance, and they now often off-label prescribe anti-seizure medications for people with depression, because these medications tend to suppress your emotions. So people don't feel good, they just don't feel much. And when you simply stop taking them, they tend to create seizures.
Wow.
So you have to wean off of them slowly and carefully. And there's a lot of drugs that you have, because they're so toxic, if you simply stop taking them, there's this huge response to get rid of them. And that can actually trigger some very, very dangerous symptoms. So with certain medications, one has to wean off of them. And it's important that you know what they are. With everything else, it's perfectly okay to go cold turkey with dietary type things. If that's what one should, I tend to be that kind of way. Like I'm either over here, I'm over here. And so when I went raw, I said, okay. I'll tell you the quick story. I had this realization a few weeks before Thanksgiving in the US that I needed to stop eating cooked food. It finally became obvious. Oh, hang on, that's not natural. I'm going to stop. And of course, later on I realized cooking creates toxins, destroys nutrients. Every time you eat cooked food, there's an immune response. Your body creates white blood cells and sends them to your digestive tract. You have a fever, et cetera, et cetera. Digestive leukocytosis. So, but I decided that I was going to finally give up cooked foods. I'd already accepted my oldest sister. She lived a couple hours away, and I'd accepted an invitation to have Thanksgiving at her house. I was actually building an addition onto her house at the time for her. So it was easy enough. I was going to be there anyway. But I thought, I'm already kind of the problem child because most of what she's making, I won't eat because it's got animal products, right? I didn't want to have, so I thought the day after Thanksgiving, I'm going raw. That's it. I'm giving up cooked food. And that was it. It wasn't like a gradual thing. I ate cooked food and I stopped eating it, period. I've done the same. I experiment with various substances. I was a child of the 60s and 70s. I drank alcohol, of course. I tried marijuana maybe 3,000 or 4,000 times.
Yeah.
I used various different substances back then because that's what we did. But I realized, in my 20s, I'm realizing that my brain no longer worked as well as it used to. And there are people kidding themselves. They think, marijuana is good for it. No, marijuana is not good for anyone. It might feel good, but it's not, and I'm not saying there's not some ways that it might beneficially impact symptoms, but lots of toxic substances make you feel better, right? That's different. I decided I was giving up all substances. No marijuana, no alcohol, no drugs of any kind from my 25th birthday on. And that was it. Done. No more. Period. For me, that worked perfectly well. Some people have a hard time doing that. I'm the personality type. I can do that. I'm here. I'm doing it. Tomorrow, I'm not doing it anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
For anyone willing to do that, I think that's perfectly fine. What I encourage people to do normally is at least 4 weeks before starting the process, come as close as you're willing to what I call an optimal diet. And that's focusing on high water content, mono fruit meals, simple green salads, no dehydrated food, no cacao, and it's not that I don't eat those things, but when someone's getting ready to cleanse their body, it would be good to leave those things alone for a while. Okay. I'll eat those things. I just came back from a short break. I was in Europe with my girlfriend, and I hired a friend who's an amazing chef, raw vegan chef. First I thought I'm going to have her prepare an intimate dinner for the two of us. And then I realized the last time I was in that country, there were several people there that had helped me in various ways. I was on a lecture tour. And so I said, you know what? I said to my girlfriend, how would you feel about having some other people? She's like, yeah, that's great. No problem. We'd rented an apartment on the sea and had plenty of space. So we wound up having a little dinner party for 8 people. And we had this amazing multi-course gourmet raw vegan meal. Not something I want to do very often.
Yeah.
I definitely feel much better eating watermelon and papayas, right?
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's fun every once in a while.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. It just has to be kept, to a minimum.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, so what does a typical day look like for somebody who comes to Tanglewood to water fast?
Well, we ask them so first of all, we have, see if I can remember how many. We have 21 rooms spread around the campus. Most of them are no more than 100 meters or so on relatively flat ground to our main building. My apartment is in the main building. Our main living area is out here. We seat about 65 people comfortably in 3,500 square feet. And so we asked them to come up here between 7, and 9 to get weighed. And every day we put them on a pretty sophisticated bioimpedance scale, which gives us their weight, their muscle mass, their body fat, their hydration. And then they rest for 30 minutes and a nurse comes along and takes their vital signs, blood pressure, pulse, temperature, oxygen saturation in the blood, blood sugar. And then they hang out for a while. I've got calls all morning at 11 a.m. I go out and give a 1-hour lecture or Q&A. And then afterwards, most days, I'll see everyone one person at a time. I'll talk to each person about what they're experiencing, what their numbers mean, what they need to do, how they're feeling, what's going on, every day. I see them every single day. Some days, on Wednesdays, I go to the beach to body surf in the afternoon. So I keep my call schedule lighter on Wednesday mornings so I can see my clients before the lecture. Once they get their vitals, between, say, 8 and 10, I'm seeing clients on Wednesday mornings out here. And that way, as soon as the lecture is over, I can get in the car and drive to the beach so I can body surf, because that's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. And so how much water do people typically drink?
Well, it varies. It varies from person to person, but most people need to drink at least 4 liters per day at the beginning of the process. And for most people, that goes up to 6 to 6.5 liters by the end of the process. And remember, here, the end of their fast is usually 3 or almost 4 weeks later, in some cases 6 weeks later. So it's going up slowly over time. It's critically important that people sip water slowly, because if you take it in too quickly, you're flushing out electrolytes.
And do you think that's whether you're water fasting or just like not water fasting, we should drink it slowly?
Yeah. Well, it's obviously more important when you're fasting. If you're eating the way most people do, let's say you're eating 5 times a day, is pretty typical in North America. Eating something, every time you're eating, you're replacing some electrolytes. So there are people who get up in the morning and guzzle a liter of water. If they're not fasting, they're probably not putting themselves in too much danger. Now, it doesn't make any sense to me, because if you drink water quickly like that, you pee most of it out. It doesn't actually help you, in any way. There's a limit to how much your 2 kidneys, healthy kidneys, can process. And theoretically, it's about 1 liter per hour. I've seen people get in trouble trying to drink that much. So I ask people not to drink more than half that much, But still, we don't really want people to drink more than they need to. And the only way to know how much they need is to be properly interpreting their daily vital signs. As I think I may have mentioned, right now I'm fasting 3 MDs. None of them understood how to interpret their vital signs with regard to how much water they should be drinking, because it's not something they've ever learned in medical school. And so I'm teaching them, they're going, oh, that makes perfect sense. And now they'll leave here understanding this is something they can go share with their patients. But it's going to vary from person to person. Without getting enough water, you don't move out the old hard material. In fact, without getting enough water, your body can't do everything it needs to do. So it's really important that we keep people within a healthy range, because if it's too much, they're flushing out electrolytes and can potentially put themselves in significant danger. If they're not drinking enough, they're also going to imbalance their electrolytes and wind up dehydrated, potentially significant danger. So we have to find that sweet spot. And we do that by interpreting their daily vital sign. It's about the interaction between blood pressure, pulse, and temperature primarily. But because we're also looking at bioimpedance information, we can see, is their hydration going up or down? Is their body fat going? It's crazy. We have people who gain body fat while they're fasting.
Wow.
Now, no one can do that. Let me clarify. You can't actually gain body fat. But as you rehydrate old waste sitting in the intestine, the bioimpedance device sees any mass that it can't account for and assumes it's fat. If it can't account for it, it must be fat. So if you're holding a bunch of water in the colon as you're rehydrating old material, the machine thinks you've gained body fat. That's not what's happening. But it's interesting with bioimpedance, because we can see when someone is letting go of edema or inflammation. I had a woman fasting with me about 2 months ago, and she was very tall and lean and was eating already reasonably well, pretty well, mostly raw vegan, if not entirely. And the first 5 or 6 days, every day I would say, okay, so this says that your overall hydration level is dropping, is down again tomorrow, down again. And she's like, why am I losing hydration? I've never had this much water in my life before. How's that possible? And I said, right. Well, I mean, first of all, it's possible because your body's needs for water go way up when your body's doing everything it's doing while fasting. So everyone's going to need more water than they usually do. But I said, but if we look at this column right here, your water mass is dropping much faster than your muscle mass. And most of the water is in your lean tissue. Wow. So there's a relationship between those two numbers. We can see them both changing. And if this is dropping much faster, if water is dropping much faster than muscle, you're letting go of extracellular water. Extracellular water is primarily edema, inflammation, or mucus. She said, oh, that makes sense. I said, what? Say more. Now, this is someone working with me remotely. So I can't, I'm seeing her, I'm seeing like I'm seeing you. I can't see her ankles or legs. She said, well, when I started this process, I had tons of edema. I said, and how about now, 6 days later? She said, it's almost all gone. I said, well, that's why your water mass is dropping every day, because the machine can't differentiate between the cellular water that's hydrating you and the extracellular water that's not actually hydrating you. So your hydration is not going down, but your water is going down because you're letting go of stuff that you want to let go of as soon as you're able to.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. And I've heard with breaking the fast, people have to be so careful how they break it. What, in your opinion, what is the best way to break it? Like I've heard people can die if they break their fast with orange juice. I don't know if that's true, or with like citrus, or what are your thoughts? Well, not what are your thoughts? What are your expert opinions on how to break the fast properly?
Well, we've never had anyone die because they broke their fast the wrong way. So I guess we're doing something right. You know, I've heard stories of people dying breaking their fast with animal products,
wow.
but I've never seen that happen. I've had people break their fast with oranges and be okay. We used to do it here. We don't do it here anymore. But I work with people from all over the world. Our clients have come from 146 countries so far, and often from countries like the Balkans. You know, in the Balkan countries, it's expensive for most people to come to us. They've got to fly halfway around the world. They don't earn so much per capita on average there, and so our prices are high. So I just did a remote fast with a group of people from Serbia a couple months ago, and when I'm working with people in countries like that, I mean, sometimes the only organic things they can get are oranges, apples, and bananas. Well, I want them to break their fast with something that's high in water. Bananas are out. They have less water than stool does, which means they're actually dehydrating you a little bit. Apples aren't particularly high. Oranges are highest. So we'll sometimes use oranges for someone in a situation like that. Here, we break our fast with tiny amounts. What I do is I give people 5 meals a day. If it's, again, our typical fast is 21 days. You know, I have a couple here now. She's dealing with cancer and she's here for 4 weeks. Her husband is a very successful businessman. He's okay, at least he thinks he is. And he really doesn't see himself taking a month off, but he wanted to make sure his wife is okay. So they came together. He's leaving tomorrow at the end of the first week. He's going home. He's eating now. He's going home. He's got to get back to work. So, you know, in his case, with a short fast, it's quite different. He's only going to eat for a day or two. He's going to start with much more. But after these longish fasts of 21, 26, 30 days or more, we start people with 5 tiny meals every couple hours apart, just to start to get the body used to processing food again. I had someone who broke her fast. She fasted 26 days with me. She broke her fast this morning. She had a tiny meal of watermelon. I mean, I'm talking about a piece of watermelon, like, let's say 3 inches in diameter, you know, and maybe a half an inch thick. It's not much. She said, I felt completely full after eating that. I ate watermelon yesterday for my first meal of the day at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I ate, I don't know, 5 pounds maybe. She ate a couple ounces. You know, I probably ate 40 times as much as she did.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then the second day, the quantity goes up, the meals become a little further apart. Always high water content foods only. So the first couple of days we offer watermelon, papaya, coconut water, fresh out of the coconut. My staff opens it up when it's time to feed someone. They're getting fresh coconut water right out of the coconut. I would never use something that's bottled or packaged in any way. It's got to be fresh. I would never use young Thai coconuts. When you take the outer husk off, it's no longer impervious to airflow. And so you've got something that's high fat, it's going rancid unless they keep it cold enough. And most companies don't keep them cold enough. So that's what we do here. You know, by the time they're at the end of the week, they're eating fairly large meals, usually 4 a day, 9, 12, 3, something like that.
Wow, amazing. And I feel like with what you do, there's a lot of reward because people's lives are just changing like so positively, like healing
Yeah,
things, and it's so incredible. But I feel like there's also some risk. So, I mean, for me, I'd feel the pressure. What if something happens to somebody or something like that? Do you feel that sometimes, like the stress of that?
I do.
And
I do,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I want everyone to do well. Sometimes people refuse to do what they need to do. And, if you don't drink enough, I mean, I can't force you to drink water. If you don't drink enough
Mhm.
water, you're going to wind up in the hospital. We have people sometimes wind up in the hospital, usually for that reason. There's not much I can do about it. I'm warning them every day. I'm telling them what's going to happen. And ultimately, they have to make their own choices. I had a young woman just a few days ago who she had her face began to swell, and this happens sometimes. Probably the lymph nodes, they're like filters, and there's a lot of garbage going through the lymphatic system, and so it often happens on one side. Sure enough, she's in a lot of pain, and she was doing this from home. I think she's 19. She was at home with her parents, and they finally said, "You have to eat." They forced her to stop. They were
Mhm.
they were it was like either eat or you're going to the hospital.
Mhm.
So, she broke her fast earlier than she should have. I didn't hear from her for a couple of days because she was in so much pain. Now she's back in touch, and I'm glad to hear from her. And she's doing fine. She's going to be okay. If you go online, you will find. I mean, we have lots of trolls. We have lots of haters. First of all, there's a lot of people who just don't understand that what we're doing actually is healing the body. They think it's a scam. They think it's fraud, whatever.
And I
And
mean, you've
then,
been doing it for so long too, right? And I feel like with that long too, like a couple of things are going to happen with how many cases you do. And I mean, people must go into it knowing there's risk, right? There's risk.
well, sure. I mean, we tell people. I mean, honestly, first of all, you're where right now?
Toronto, Canada.
You're in Toronto. Okay, I thought so. There's risk right now sitting in your home in Toronto. An
Hmm.
airplane could fall out of the sky onto your house. It's not
Yeah.
very likely, but there is a small chance. That's safer right now than walking down the street in Toronto, where there's a little bit more risk involved. Fasting for most people is probably less risky than walking down the street in a major city. Okay.
Wow.
If they can follow simple directions, there's really very little risk involved. Our bodies were meant to do this. Our bodies are virtually infinitely intelligent. They won't detoxify too quickly because they're smart enough to know what they can handle. Now, they often detoxify more quickly than is comfortable, but your body really doesn't care about you being comfortable. It wants to get the garbage out. Okay. So there are very, very few real risks involved for most people if they can follow simple directions, but there's always some risk. And it's important for people to understand that. I require people who work with me to be willing to take full responsibility. I can't take risk. Only you're in your body. So
Hmm.
I can give you the benefit of my experience, but you have to decide what you need to do. If you tell me what's going on, I'll give you my advice. I'll say, well, if it were me, this is what I would do. But ultimately, it has to be your choice. And so we require people to take that responsibility. I can't tell you how often I'll have someone write to me. We had someone recently. We had a young man come, I think it was 3 months ago, from Israel. I think he was 19 or 20. And his mother wrote to me and said, you need to tell him he's too skinny to fast. I said, he's not too skinny to fast. He'll be fine. He's
Hmm.
probably going to die. And if he dies, I'm coming after him like he's going to be perfectly fine. There's no reason to worry about anything. I get threatened all the time.
Oh, I don't know how
This,
you deal with it. I couldn't do it.
well, I mean, I'll tell you something. I healed myself, right? I saw my entire life change as a result of
Hmm.
fasting. And I thought, this process is miraculous. And I need to let people know about this. And I looked around. I mean, at the time I thought I could write, I could speak, I had done some public speaking. I could use that platform. And I've done both of those things. But I looked around and I saw what was available in terms of the fasting centers. And I thought, these places are way too clinical. I wouldn't want to spend a month in one of these places.
Hmm.
There's research that says if you're in a hospital and have a view of a tree from your bed through a window, you'll heal 15 to 20% faster. It's crazy just
Wow.
being able to see a tree.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Here, we're literally ensconced in nature. Every room, you've got views of gardens, jungles. You're in it. You can hear the birds and the insects,
You
and it's
just breathe
amazing.
better there. When I lived there, the first thing I noticed, oh, I'm breathing better. I'm calmer. Like you're right. Yeah.
Exactly. 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 So I thought, okay, I'm going to create a beautiful place where people actually want to be and they feel good, where the air is clean, the water is pure. And so we have a spring on site. We drink, this This is spring water I'm sipping. It's crystal clear. It's incredible. So I thought, this feels like my mission in life. I need to share this with people. And I realized going into it that I could get in trouble. I'm gonna be certainly running afoul with medical people. And sure enough, in the US, the Maryland Medical Board charged me with practicing medicine without a license.
Wow.
Interesting, the statute says practicing medicine means you are diagnosing, treating, or prescribing. I said to them, we don't do any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
You're prescribing fasts. I'm like, yeah, the definition of prescribe is pretty narrow. It means you are, telling people they should take a specific pharmaceutical substance. You can't prescribe. If I recommend a restaurant, am I prescribing a restaurant to? Can I prescribe a movie? Is that illegal too?
Mm-hmm.
This is meeting. They said, well, it doesn't matter. If people come to you and they get well, then you must be practicing medicine. And there are people online who say, look, this guy was charged with practicing medicine without a license. Therefore, what does that mean? It only means that the medical board tried to run me out of town. That's all.
Did you ever consider, oh, maybe I'll just stop this, or no? You've helped so many people though,
I hear from people all the time who tell me how this has changed their life all the time. And it's what keeps me going. But to be honest with you, yes, sometimes this life is very difficult. I've never taken a salary. I live very simply. I have a tiny apartment. You're seeing most of it right here. There's a little kitchen outside here on the patio. There's a bathroom here and a bedroom through that door. And that door goes into the main commercial kitchen with the office right next to it. So it's sort of the control center. But I live very simply, and sometimes it's very stressful. And I've thought to myself, why am I doing this? Now, honestly, my plan after coming up on 27 years now of doing this, my plan is to find a doctor who I can train to supervise fast. And that, I think, for the average person, that'll make them feel better. There's an MD on the side. Find a manager who can manage the business. We're creating an amazing project down the street. We have 1,500 acres, I think, under contract, 600 plus we already own. It's about 15 or 16 contiguous farms. We have the 2 highest waterfalls in Central America. We have 18 more waterfalls in what will be a nature preserve. We're going to create a huge permaculture-based organic fruit farm. There'll be a world-class botanical garden. There'll be zip lines and mountain biking and all kinds of stuff. And all the land will be owned by a 501c3 nonprofit foundation that we've already set up. So, I as I said, I've never taken a salary from Tanglewood. I didn't really ever occur to me that when I was back in my 30s when I started this, that at 61 I'd still be doing this without paying myself anything. But at some point I might want to stop, and it would be nice to have a little bit of money in the bank. And so I will earn money on this project. But mostly this is to protect the environment, to create 2 intentional, there'll be a raw vegan community, there'll be a vegan community, intentional communities there. There'll be opportunities for people to run a business, because with all the things we're doing, we'll be attracting tons of tourists. And so my goal is over the next few years to transition into spending most of my time overseeing that project. Having other people run this business. Yeah. And, I think with all the years I've been doing this, I can now speak about this somewhat authoritatively. And I don't necessarily need to keep doing it all myself.
Absolutely. Well, that's amazing. That's exciting. And I just want to say too, I think it's extremely important, right? That people do come to a place like that, or do their water fasts supervised, that they don't take this on just on their own at home. I can water fast for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 days.
No.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you completely. In fact, it's decreased a little bit recently. I'm not sure why. Maybe just because I kept talking about it, people stopped doing it. But for years, I would get 4 or 5 messages every week from people who were saying things like, I fasted on my own. I screwed it up. Now I need your help. They're begging me to help. And I want to help everyone I can, but my time is limited. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And so, we hear this all the time. In fact, I'll share something quickly with you. I came back from this break just over a week ago. It was actually a week from today. I arrived at Tanglewood. We opened on Saturday, a week from tomorrow. I found on my desk a gift. This is the gift wrap. It was a T-shirt. And this was left on my desk by a guy who has produced a documentary about fasting. And I don't remember what it's called. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet. He's a young guy in his 30s. He's fasted many, many times all over the world. He's from Australia. He produced this documentary. He came to our fruit festival last year, which, by the way, is an amazing event. This year, it's the 17th to the 24th of February, 100% organic fruits.
Wow.
We'll probably have between 30 and 50 varieties. We'll have live music. We'll have ecstatic dance. We'll have yoga classes. We'll have a couple of bonfires. We spend one day at Carrillo. We spend one day at our waterfalls just up the road. Anyway, he was there for that. And he said, you know what? I want to come fast with you. I didn't talk to you when I was doing the documentary. I knew about you, but I want to come fast with you. So, because he met a lot of people at our festival that had already fasted with me. So he came to fast. And here's what he said. He said, Loren, I can't thank you enough for what you've given me. This last 5 weeks has been truly life-changing. It's been everything I hoped for and more. I will most certainly be back. He actually said to me a couple times now, this is by far the most powerful experience he's ever had. And this is a guy who's fasted many times all over the place before coming.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, you're absolutely right. You know, I get so much positive. It's so gratifying hearing from people who say, change my life. You know, I got my life back. We have a woman, medicine says 2 years after paralysis, 0 chance of recovery. We have a woman having bowel movements, having feeling in her spine, moving her hands and arms 4.5 years after being paralyzed from the neck down. Okay. The body's amazing. We give it a chance. It's amazing what it can do sometimes. Wow. So I'll probably do everything I can to continue making sure that we're fasting as long as I'm able to. Mm-hmm. My goal is actually eventually to create centers around the world, because right now we're people are coming here from all over the world because there's nothing like it. Mm-hmm. But it makes it dramatically more difficult for people from various countries if they have to travel so far. So we could have something in Asia. We could have something maybe in somewhere in southeastern Europe where land's not so expensive. And, mm-hmm. Far enough south like Greece where it's warm enough most of the year. It would mm-hmm. still be a very nice experience. But yeah, I mean, my goal now is to finish the book I started 5 years ago, write several more, because there's a lot of them I want to write. I've got a children's book that's being illustrated right now. It's amazing. There's a lot of cool things I'd like to do, and I need more time to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, amazing. And this has been amazing. I've been so selfish, though. I've been asking you all my questions. Do you have time for a couple of viewers' questions?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I won't take up too much more of your time, though.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
And so I know someone was asking, what do you typically eat in a day? And what is a simple water fasting method?
Okay. What do I typically eat in a day? So I eat once or twice per day. As I said, I mean, watermelon is my favorite fruit on the planet. And so normally we get watermelon here all year long. We typically buy the round ones like this, and I'll eat a melon about that size. Typically, that's my first meal, usually between 2 and 3 in the afternoon is my first meal of the day. I'll eat again around 6 if I'm having a second meal. It will be fruit 4 or 5 times a week and something with greens, a salad, etc. A couple, 2 or 3 times a week. So my meals, I mean, they'll vary, but there'll be watermelon. There'll be a couple of papayas. It might be 4 or 5 mangoes. We have, I think, 18 varieties of bananas on site. There are, there's a couple that I really love. And when we have like the Cuban red bananas, I'll eat those every day until they're gone. I only take volunteers that don't like them. I don't want to share. What else? So I mean, that's sort of what a meal looks like. If it's a salad, it's a pretty big bowl. I can eat a lot of lettuce and cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers, but they're usually very simple, no more than 4 or 5. Maximum of 6 ingredients. That's a typical day for me is 1 or 2 meals, pretty simple fare, usually no more than about 1,200 calories. We have a guy delivering 15 good-sized durian to us on Tuesday. And my intention is to eat until I can't move.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Incredible.
Right. Now, freshly picked, it's incredible. It's not like the frozen stuff you get in North America most of the time. I'll overeat on occasions like that, but normally I don't. Simple water fast. Well, I mean, I'm not sure what else there is except a simple water fast. But, for us, it's about resting as completely as possible. The whole point is to conserve as much energy as you can so your body can use that energy to cleanse and heal. And if you look at nature, do you have a cat or dog? Have you ever had one?
Not right now, but I have had a dog, yeah.
If you've ever seen a cat or dog get sick enough, they will lay down and refuse food. You can try to feed them, put it right in front of them, they won't touch it. Okay, they instinctively know it takes too much energy to process food. Okay, and so Every species, virtually every species, as I said earlier, will fast when sick enough or badly enough injured. They don't do anything, right? The whole goal is to rest as completely as you can, to slowly sip the water you need, and that's about it. That's really what it should be.
Okay, amazing. And the next question, they're wondering, have you ever healed anyone of STDs? I think they meant to say. And why
Right.
is this
Sexually
topic never
transmitted.
discussed?
Well, the topic is discussed sometimes. I'm not sure what you mean. Yes. First of all, let me clarify. Okay. I've never healed anyone of anything because only the body can heal. But I understand the question. Do we have clients that heal from STDs? The answer is yes, absolutely. All kinds of things. The most common thing, and I don't remember the percentage, but I think it's something like 50 or 60% of the population now is carrying some form of the herpes virus, or at least supposedly. Again, I'm not even sure if viruses exist. But most people have these occasional herpes outbreaks. It's a very common thing. It could be mouth herpes or genital herpes, one or two. I can't say with any authority that if there is a virus, that it's gone forever as a result of fasting. I can say that we'll take people to the point where, as long as they keep making excellent choices, they'll never have another outbreak. Okay. So there's a simple example. STDs vary quite a bit. Simple STDs, chlamydia is pretty basic. Your body can probably heal that through fasting. Yeah, we've seen this on various occasions. There's others that are going to be more difficult, perhaps, to deal with. But every situation is different. Each case is different because it depends on what else is going on for someone.
Absolutely. Okay. And the next question, they're wondering, they said every time they water fast, they get thrush on their tongue, and they're wondering, why is that?
Well, right. So thrush is a very specific condition, and the tongue goes white. But what happens isn't actually thrush. Not technically. What's going on is, as you are rehydrating old waste in the small intestine and reabsorbing it into the bloodstream, it shows up on the tongue. Now, why would that happen? I have a theory. It's only a theory. But my guess is if an infinitely intelligent body knows that if you're reabsorbing a bunch of toxins in the bloodstream, it probably would be better if you didn't eat so that your body could finish the process of detoxification. When your tongue is coated like that, food doesn't taste very good. And so it might encourage people to not eat or not eat very much. But what's happening for this person who's asking the question, you're rehydrating old waste sitting in the intestine. And when that happens, your tongue gets coated. It's a common thing. Virtually everyone's tongue gets coated. Once all the garbage is out of your system, your tongue stops being coated.
Okay. And somebody's asking, can a super underweight person do water fasting? I think that's a good question.
When you say super underweight person, you mean they can leap over tall buildings at a single bound, or it's faster than a speeding bullet like that? Yeah, we actually fast very underweight people regularly, all the time.
Wow.
And the reason why, it's a lot of people won't take them, but I understand that there are many people who can't put on healthy weight because they're not digesting, absorbing, assimilating very well. Okay, somewhere along the line, something's breaking down. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Have you seen any of my videos?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so the woman who's been producing them for me for the last 4 years, she's actually about to leave us after 4 years living on site. She's done 4 fasts with me over the last 6 years. She first came here from the US 6.5 years ago. She was married at the time, not anymore. She came to fast. She had various issues. And she is 5'7" and weighed 88 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, she fasted 21 days.
Wow.
And healed her body and was able to start gaining weight. We fasted a young naturopathic physician. She was just here for the second time a couple of months ago from San Diego. When she came last year for the first time, she is 5'6" and weighed 85 pounds. She was told by True North in California she was too skinny to fast. She came here and fasted for 15 days and could have gone longer, but she had to go back to school. She has since graduated from naturopathy school. As a result, she'd been losing weight for years, couldn't keep weight on, couldn't gain weight. After fasting the first time, she left here. She came in at 85 pounds. She left here about 75 pounds, I think, something like that, after eating for 5-6 days. And she came back to us at 97 pounds. So she'd already put quite a bit of weight on.
Wow.
And she fasted for 21 days. We had a gentleman who was 77 years old. And you can actually find an interview with Don. You can find interviews with Morgan as well on my YouTube channel. But Don fasted with me in April of 2021. He's 6 feet tall. He weighed 101 pounds when he arrived here. I didn't let him go beyond 16 days because he wanted to do 21, but I said to him at 16, Don, you don't have any more reserves. You have to stop now. He left here, let me think, I think he was 104 pounds after having, so he wanted to make sure he did the refeeding process as well as possible. So he 21-day fast that he signed up for normally is a 4-week process. He registered to be here for 8 weeks, I think. And then after he got here, he said, can I stay the whole 10-week session? So he spent 10 weeks with us. He fasted for 16 days. He spent 7.5 weeks refeeding here. He had between 6 and 17 bowel movements every day.
Wow.
Once he started.
That's unbelievable to me.
And still gained weight and still left here at 104 pounds after eliminating all that stuff. Okay, so his body was, it's incredible what happens. So we fast very underweight people all the time.
Yeah. Okay. And just 2 more, and then I'll let you go. Somebody was asking, this is a great question too. And a lot of people ask me this with cleanses and stuff too, but how to prevent a binge after a prolonged fast, like if they do a long water fast or
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of answers. Again, first of all, you want to have supervision. You want to have guidance through the process. Ideally, you're here where you're in a protected environment, okay? Because it's pretty hard to binge here. If you are going to binge, it's going to be on what? Oranges and bananas. You're not in real danger. But so part of it, I think, is having supervision and being in the right environment. Part of it may be starting with the right mindset and, I encourage people at the very beginning to get really clear about what they're committed to, okay? Like really, really clear what they're committed. Because if you know what you're committed to, then you do whatever you need to do to make that happen, okay, when there's real commitment. But I think the other part, and this is going to be surprising for people, the other piece is you can avoid the binges to some degree by fasting long enough, okay? When the fast is too short, you break your fast and you still have this nasty stuff in your system by the time you're done, even done the refeeding process, it's still in there. And if it's in your system and you're rehydrating, you're going to reabsorb toxins from it and you're going to crave it, okay? This is why people crave heroin and nicotine and alcohol and cocaine. As the body's detoxifying, these cravings occur. So if we can get enough of the stuff out of the body by having people fast long enough, it's a lot easier afterward. They don't have the same cravings. Now, some people still have trouble, but for some people, I would say, if you have a particular addictive personality, what you might want to do is plan on having ongoing coaching afterwards. So there are some people who work with me that hire me to speak to them every week for the first 2 or 3 months.
Great idea.
It's if they've got someone to answer, if they're going to have to talk to me every week and tell me what they did, they don't want to have to tell me what they did, right? So it's that makes it easier for some people to make better choices. That's just human nature.
Yeah, great idea. And I'm wondering, how do people know when they've got all the gunk out, when all the mucoid plaque and all the old crap is out? How do you know when it's all out?
You really can't know that. There's no test for it. One of the things that we can know whether you're done for now or not, because when your system is clean and you're eating, let's say you're eating only fruit and simple green salads, right? This kind of a simple raw vegan diet. If that's all you're eating and your system is clean, every bowel movement will be quick, easy, clean, like nothing on the paper, odor-free, and I'm forgetting one. Quick, easy, painless, quick, easy, painless, clean, and odor-free every time, right? I had irritable bowel syndrome for 3 years. I spent hours in the bathroom because I would go from diarrhea to constipation. And I had a stack of books on my toilet tank because I'd be in there for hours every day. And I'd forget. So after I got myself well, it took me about 6 months, by the way, to go from being the sickest person I knew to being so healthy. People would come up to me and say, oh my God, you look amazing. What did you do? Can you help my whatever? I was running a small commercial real estate company. I started spending more time coaching people because it felt good to help people. And that's when I decided to become a full-time health coach many, many, many years ago. But anyway, I would forget. And I'd like, okay, I need to go to the toilet. I'll bring a book with me because I'd be used to reading in the bathroom. Before I could open the book, I was done. It's like, half a second, it's out, it's painless, it's quick, it's easy. There's no stress, there's no strain. It doesn't smell bad. There's, sometimes I think I wipe and I think, did I miss? Like there's nothing on the paper. That's how it is. That's how it is. So you can tell if, let's say that for 3 weeks, a month, every bowel movement is like that. You can probably take it for granted that for the time being, you're not eliminating any more old material. There might still be some, but it's not coming out at this point. It might take another fast to do that.
Okay. And I know a few people were asking, they want to know your thoughts on apple cider vinegar, kimchi, and sauerkraut.
Right. So first of all, apple cider vinegar, like all other vinegars, is closely related to alcohol. It's actually called wood alcohol. It's what people used to call it. It's a very similar formula. And like alcohol, it's a cellular poison. It kills human cells on contact. Okay. I don't believe there's any such thing as healthy vinegar. Okay. The guy who started this idea that apple cider vinegar was good for it was a guy called Paul Bragg, who sold apple cider vinegar. You have the right and perhaps obligation, if someone tells you that something is good for you, to ask questions. Does this make sense? Does it resonate for you? I mean, I'm telling you fasting is good for you and you should come to me. You should ask some questions. If this doesn't resonate for you, then that's okay. Don't come to me. Right? But, I would say he was just trying to sell, benefit himself. I don't think this stuff is good for anyone. Kimchi and sauerkraut are interesting because obviously theoretically the benefit of fermented foods is that they're providing some probiotic benefits, right? You're helping with the beneficial bacteria in the gut and the system. The problem is that there's a very specific balance that should be there. And it's really difficult for us to create that on our own. And the good news is, mostly what we do here is water-only fasting. It's really, really difficult to destroy all the beneficial bacteria, no matter what you've done. I mean, I took a lot of antibiotics back when I was sick in my 20s. Okay. And still, when I fasted, I was able to repopulate with no problem whatsoever. So we typically don't need those things. If we give the body a chance, just get out of its way. It's really hard to kill off the bacteria and they repopulate easily. So, it happens every once in a while. I'll try these things again. I don't normally eat them, don't make them here, but I was at a friend's place a couple of years ago and they made a big batch of sauerkraut. I was like, have some. I was like, okay, I'll try it. Afterwards, my body said, bad idea, don't do it. And that's what always happens when I eat fermented foods. And my system works really, really well. I have no problem generally. I'm clear that for me, and I think for many of my clients, we feel much better leaving these things alone. The way I think about this, living on a fruit-based diet, you've probably had the same experience. I'll sometimes bite into a piece of pineapple or mango and it's fermented. What do you do? What do you do when you bite into a piece of fermented food?
I spit it out.
You spit it out. That's the natural impulse, to spit it out. I don't think our bodies want this stuff. So I understand why people recommend it, but honestly, I think it's fairly clear. There's science that says, unless you're one of those very few people who've actually decimated all of your bacteria, which is hard to do, you're probably not going to benefit from this stuff. Now, there's plenty of people that argue with me. I realize this is an opinion. There's people on the other side who say, no, there's plenty of research. This is good for you. But again, I'm talking about in the context of taking people who actually get their body healthy. We don't need it. Okay. If someone's listening, not willing to do what they need to do to truly get the body clean and healthy, maybe you'll still benefit from it. I don't know.
True. Well, Loren, this has been amazing. I've truly, truly enjoyed and loved this conversation with you. And I mean, there's just so many other things I would love to ask you. Maybe we can have you on again one day in the future. That would be amazing.
I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, I would love to.
I love doing these kinds of shows. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. And please let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. Right here at my chair, my desk. The easiest way is tanglewoodwellnesscenter.com. You can go to the academyforvibrantliving.com. That's .com. You can go to lascascadas.org. That's our project down the road. You can find me on Instagram, Loren Lockman. You can find me on YouTube. I've got a big channel on YouTube, Loren Lockman. I'm on Facebook. Tanglewood is on Facebook as well. So it's not that hard to find.
No. Yeah. Okay. Everybody go follow Loren. And to the viewers, I hope you got some value from this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up right now and make sure you subscribe if you don't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.